Welcome to the deep dive, and today we're jumping into episode 14 of the Boardroom Masterclass. The world has certainly kept us on our toes since 2020, hasn't it? We've navigated a global pandemic, seen these breathtaking leaps in technology, weathered serious economic shocks, and, well, felt the ripple effects of increased political polarization. These aren't just headlines, they're dynamics that have profoundly reshaped the landscape for organizations. And the role of the board in managing risk and charting a stable, forward-looking course, gosh, it feels more critical now than ever before. Today, we're taking a deep dive into some truly, I think, profound insights that can help boards not just survive these turbulent times, but actually overcome emerging issues and remain deeply relevant well into the future. Our mission really is to unpack fundamental principles of leadership and organizational success. We're drawing directly from Simon Sinek's transformative work, Start With Why, to understand how boards can build that enduring relevance and, crucially, inspire action.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating here, I think, is that the answers aren't necessarily buried in complex new tech or, advanced financial models. Instead, they lie in something much more fundamental: how organizations and really their leadership define their very purpose. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's really about shifting from just reacting, to market forces or quarterly reports to proactively shaping the future. And that starts by understanding and articulating why you exist.
So this idea of why, it's absolutely central to Sinek's philosophy. He explains it with something he calls the golden circle. It sounds simple, maybe deceptively so, but it's incredibly powerful. WH, how, and what? Now, most organizations, and honestly, even many of us as individuals, we tend to communicate from the outside in. We'll tell you what we do, then perhaps how we do it, and maybe, just maybe, if we get around to it, why we do it.
Right.
But truly inspiring leaders and organizations, they flip that whole script.
That's the core distinction, isn't it? The why is your purpose, your cause, your belief. It's the fundamental reason your organization exists, and it goes way beyond just making money.
Yeah.
Then the how. Those are the processes, the systems, maybe the values that actually bring that why to life.
Yeah.
And finally, the what. Well, that's the tangible stuff, the products, the services, the outcomes your organization produces. So for boards, as the ultimate stewards of the organization's future, making sure this why is crystal clear, well, it's absolutely paramount. It gives you that unwavering strategic direction and that deep resilience you really need in these uncertain times.
It's striking when you look back how often you see this play out. Sinek uses the example of the race for flight. You had Samuel Pierpont Langley, brilliant guy, tons of funding, top talent, connections. But his drive was the what? He wanted to be first, to be famous.
Right, the outcome.
Exactly. And he failed. Then you have the Wright brothers working out of a bike shop, far fewer resources, no fancy degrees. But they had a dream. They believed flight would change the world. Their motivation was a clear why. Langley just gave up when he wasn't first. The Wrights. They kept going, driven by something much bigger.
And we see that pattern again and again. Think about Apple. They've jumped across incredibly diverse industries, computers, music, phones, yet they command this fierce, almost, tribal loyalty. It's not just what they make, it's why they do it, challenging the status quo, empowering the individual. Right. Sinek's famous line captures it perfectly. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. That clarity of purpose gives them incredible flexibility and influence.
Or think about Martin Luther King Jr. and the Civil Rights Movement. He didn't just list grievances, the what. He articulated a powerful why, a shared belief in a truly united America. That vision drew 250,000 people to Washington, D.C., without fancy invitations or a website. His clear WHY attracted people who shared that belief from all walks of life. So it really throws down a challenge for boards, doesn't it? If your strategy is only about the what's, the earnings, the market share, the new product launches, if there's no depth why underneath, what are you actually building for the long term?
It forces a really fundamental question for every board member. Is our strategy just about what we produce? Or is it deeply rooted in a purpose that genuinely inspires every single decision we make? Because that purpose, that's your North Star, especially when change is accelerating like it is now, it stops your company from just becoming another commodity, easily swapped out for the next cheapest option. It gives you that anchor.
Okay, so if the WHY is so important, what happens when companies don't lead with it? Sinek talks about manipulations. These are the tactics we see all the time, right? Big price drops, endless promotions using fear, aspirational messages, peer pressure, even just novelty dressed up as innovation.
Yeah, exactly.
Think about General Motors offering huge cashback incentives, thousands of dollars, just to move cars off the lot. Or how some companies, like I think Sinek mentioned Samsung with rebates, they actually count on breakage people not bothering to claim the rebate for part of their profit.
And while those tactics,
Yeah.
look, they can definitely drive a short-term sale, a transaction,
Yeah.
they're really damaging in the long run. They create stress, they breed distrust, and they fundamentally prevent any kind of lasting loyalty. For boards dealing with today's really complex, interconnected issues,
Correct.
supply chains, talent wars, you name it, relying on that kind of short-term fix is a huge risk. Remember the Motorola RAZR phone?
Oh, yeah, the super thin one.
Well, exactly. It was a shiny object. Sales soared initially purely because it was new and cool. But it wasn't truly innovative in a way that changed the industry. So sales tanked pretty quickly as competitors caught up. Real innovation, like the light bulb or iTunes, that transforms industries. It's
Yeah.
not just a temporary thrill.
That's fascinating because manipulations just don't build loyalty, do they? Loyalty is that deeper thing where people are willing to maybe turn down a better product or a lower price because they genuinely want to stick with you. And what builds that, Sinek argues, and I think it's compelling, it's trust. We have this deep-seated human need to belong. Dr. Seuss even nailed it in the Sneetches, right? We're drawn to people and organizations that seem to share our values, our beliefs, and that alignment, that's where trust comes from.
Precisely. And this isn't just some corporate theory. Think about General Lori Robinson in the U.S. Air Force. As an air weapons controller, her deep why was about clearing a path for others, enabling pilots to push themselves and their aircraft further with confidence. That purpose, that feeling of creating a safety net, it built this incredible implicit trust with her pilots. If you connect that to the boardroom, an organization that really understands and prioritizes building authentic trust by living its WHY consistently, well, it cultivates a culture where people, employees, and customers are willing to go that extra mile, that kind of deep commitment. It's invaluable for navigating the risk we see today and staying ahead.
And it even ties into our biology, apparently. Our big decisions, the ones that feel right, often come from the limbic brain. That's the older part, controlling emotions, behavior, decision-making, not just the rational neocortex. And trust, that lives in the limbic brain too, which explains why, a recommendation from someone you trust can completely override a spreadsheet full of data.
It's that gut feeling.
Right. So what does this all mean for a board trying to navigate these stormy seas, especially with change happening so fast? It means chasing every quick win, every promotion, every gimmick. Yeah, it might fill the coffers for a quarter or two, but it fundamentally hollows out the very foundation of trust that a resilient, future-ready organization desperately needs. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many companies are still caught in those short-term traps, thinking they're being smart, when they're actually eroding their own future?
Absolutely. It's often the things you can't easily measure on a balance sheet that matter most in the long run.
Yeah.
A strong brand, for instance. It isn't built just on features or price. It's built on that clear, compelling WHY. When what WHY is clear and lived consistently, trust follows. When you have that trust, people will often happily pay a premium, put up with small inconveniences, or wait longer just because they feel connected to your cause.
Okay, so we understand the importance of WHY and the dangers of manipulation. How do we make this practical for a board? Sinek talks about 3 pillars: clarity of WHY, discipline of HOW, and consistency of what makes sense. And he offers this brilliant little tool, a metaphor really, called the Celery Test.
The Celery Test.
Yeah.
It's fantastic because it's so simple but so effective as a filter.
Yeah.
Imagine your organization's core WHY is, let's say, to do only things that are healthy. Simple enough. Now, someone comes along and gives you great advice. You should buy M&Ms, rice milk, Oreos, and celery. They're all selling well.
Right.
Well, if your WHY is health, you immediately know you only buy the rice milk and the celery. The M&Ms and Oreos might be great products for someone, but they just don't align with your WHY. They don't pass the test.
Okay, so applying that, let's think about board decisions, especially in this complex environment we're talking about. Any major decision, hiring a CEO, a big strategic partnership, entering a new market, even launching a flagship product, you should run it through the Celery Test. Does this specific action, this what, genuinely align with our core purpose, our YUI? Sinek uses Volkswagen as an example. VW, famous for the people's car, right? Their WI was historically about sort of power to the people, accessibility.
Affordability, reliability.
Exactly. Then they launched the Phaeton, a $70,000 luxury sedan. By all accounts, it was a good car, technically. but it bombed commercially. Why? Because it was completely inconsistent with what people believed Volkswagen stood for. It failed their Celery Test spectacularly.
And contrast that with Toyota and Honda. When they wanted to go upscale, targeting the luxury market, what did? They didn't just slap a higher price tag on a Toyota or Honda. They created entirely new brands, Lexus and Acura. Very smart. It allowed them to keep their original brands true to their established WHY's reliability, value, while letting Lexus and Acura build their own WHYs, HOWs, and what's tailored to the luxury segment. It raises a really important question for listeners, for any board member. In a world full of tempting market opportunities, how disciplined is your board? How rigorously do you ensure that what you do genuinely proves why you exist? That discipline, it's crucial for staying relevant.
And it's not just about products. There's a great story about Christina Harbridge and her collections agency, Bridgeport Financial. Her WHY was about treating people, even debtors, with dignity and respect. A pretty radical idea in that industry. So how does she measure success? Not by dollars collected for bonuses. She measured the number of thank you cards her agents received.
Incredible.
Isn't it? And the result. Her company collected something like 300% more than the industry average. It perfectly shows how focusing on and measuring the why can actually drive better what's.
That example just nails it. When you measure the WHY, the what's tend to take care of themselves. Which brings us, ironically, to one of the biggest challenges organizations face, and therefore boards must manage: success itself. As companies grow, that original founder's WHY, it can get fuzzy, it can get diluted. The focus naturally shifts to the things that are easy to measure, the watts and HOWs, profit margins, market share, efficiency metrics, and sometimes that happens at the expense of the original purpose. Sinek calls this the split. Okay? You start confusing achievement, tangible things like size or revenue, with true success, where he defines as that ongoing pursuit of your WHY. It's a subtle drift, but a dangerous one.
And that split leads directly to another powerful metaphor, the school bus test. It's a real gut check for any board. The question is stark. If the founder or the current charismatic CDO were suddenly gone tomorrow, hit by that metaphorical school bus, would the organization keep going? Would it maintain its momentum, its direction, its soul? To pass that test, the founder's WHY can't just reside in their head. It has to be extracted, articulated, and woven so deeply into the company's culture that it becomes everyone's purpose.
Yeah, and we've seen the consequences when that doesn't happen right, often quite painfully. Think about Walmart after Sam Walton. For all its initial success, it arguably lost touch with its original WIY of genuinely serving people. It became much more focused on just cheap and hyper-efficiency, which led to various scandals and, a tarnished reputation over time. Even when they did positive things later, like environmental initiatives, people were skeptical because that core WHY felt fuzzy. Or Microsoft, originally founded with this clear vision: empower people, put a PC on every desk. But after Bill Gates stepped back from the day-to-day, you could argue it became perceived more as just a software company. The driving WY became less clear.
And the classic example is Apple. After Steve Jobs first left in '85, John Sculley came in. Undoubtedly a very capable CEO in terms of business operations, the what and the how. But he wasn't there to lead the cause, the revolution. The company's products became, as Sinek puts it, less revolutionary and more evolutionary. It really wasn't until Jobs came back in '97 that the clarity of WHY, that sort of rabble-rousing spirit, returned and Apple started changing the world again. So for boards looking to ensure future relevance through all the changes and shocks, they absolutely have to be the guardians of the WHY.
They do. It means actively nurturing a culture where that purpose isn't just a plaque on the wall. It needs to be understood, clearly articulated, and genuinely embodied by everyone from the top down and the bottom up. That's what builds resilience against leadership changes and market shifts. And it means succession isn't just about finding someone with the right resume. It's about finding a leader who is truly in lockstep with the original cause, someone who picks up that original banner and carries it forward, not trust to plant the whole new flag.
Southwest Airlines is such a great example of getting that right. Herb Kelleher built that airline on a powerful WHY: freedom, championing the common person, making air travel accessible. And crucially, his successors, people like Howard Putnam and Colleen Barrett, they embodied that WHY. Putnam even tells a funny story about seeing a hole in Kelleher's sock during his interview and realizing, okay, this guy genuinely is like everyone else. It reinforced the WHY.
Exactly.
And that deep cultural alignment meant the company's unique focus, including prioritizing their employees almost above all else, survived long after Kelleher stepped back. That's why their loyalty, internal and external, is legendary. It lets them navigate industry turbulence with remarkable agility.
Their ability to consistently pass the Celery Test, across decades through different leaders in almost all their decisions, that demonstrates their enduring relevance. When you can look at a company's products, their marketing, how their people act, and clearly see the WHY reflected. Yeah, they've managed to bake that purpose deep into their DNA. They've navigated growth and succession successfully.
So, wrapping up our deep dive today, it seems pretty clear that building a board truly ready for the future, one that can handle today's pace of change, involves way more than just strategy documents and financial targets. It fundamentally starts with getting crystal clear on and staying true to an inspiring WHY. We've looked at how that clarity of purpose, combined with avoiding those short-term manipulations, using simple tools like the Celery Test for consistency, and planning succession around shared belief, how all that is just paramount in this unpredictable world.
Ultimately, the lasting impact and relevance of any board and the organization it guides really hinges on its ability to genuinely inspire, not just manage, but inspire. We've seen how powerful that clear WHY has been for companies like Apple and Southwest, letting them thrive through enormous shifts. So the final thought for you listening right now, consider your own board's purpose, your own organization's deepest beliefs. If you truly knew, and more importantly, lived your WHY, what seemingly impossible challenge, what emerging dynamic out there, tech disruption, economic uncertainty, societal shifts, what would your board be inspired, truly inspired to tackle next in this brave new world